Good afternoon, everyone out there on YouTube. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. Today's video, we are going to do just a plain old oil change on my 2010 Ford Fusion named Jadzia. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, before we get really into this at all, and for this vehicle, it has to get up in the air in order for you to get access to the oil drain pan. Otherwise it sits too low. So you can use jack and jack stand to get it in the air. I like using ramps because it's simple. If you have a lift, you lucky person, you can use a lift. But you got to get this up in the air somehow. You could dig a pit under the car. Some people do it that way. But you got to get some clearance so that you can get access to stuff. And once you've got that, will be good. Just remember that right now the whole car is tilted, right? So that matters when you are checking the final level on your oil. You should be able to get pretty close with it tilted, but in order to check it and make sure you're 100% on the mark, you have to back the car off and sit level when you do that final dipstick check. So I did an oil change on this one during the powertrain video series whenever I replaced the powertrain in this thing. But I didn't really focus on the oil change. I think I mentioned it, and that was kind of that. So I haven't done a full standalone, and now we're going to do that. Calls out for 5W20. I use 10W30, which is also an acceptable weight of oil for this engine. Should work just fine. I use 1030 on all my stuff just to keep costs down. And your oil dipstick is here. Your oil fill cap is here. And that's all we need to worry about topside until we actually get to the point where we need to do some filling. So let's go ahead and get to the bottom side and locate the oil sump and figure out the size of our drain bolt. Get all that rolling. Alright, so we are under the car, and this waffle board looking thing is your oil sump, and that is your drain bolt. And you can see I got some extra oil hanging out here. Didn't know that was there, but it looks like maybe I have an oil pan gasket leak here that I'm going to need to address. That's kind of what I'm thinking here, but that'll be another project for another day. I'll have to see if it's coming down from the valve covers or not. But anyway, that is our bolt. So you're going to want a pan to catch all your oil in, get it in position. Make sure you've got the drain on it open. Make sure you got the bleeder open so that it can drain correctly. And now we got to figure out what size this is. I got a 15 on here. Nice. So it's a 15. It's kind of handy. So we're going to go ahead and break this loose. Oh my. I wonder if my brother's the one who tightened this. There it goes. Okay. So make sure you are over here on the sump, because your neighbor over there, that's your transmission drain. Don't open that one. That will put you into a world of hurt, so leave that guy alone. Alright, so we're gonna loosen this up, switch to an overhand so that when the oil starts peeing out, I don't get caught in it. And there we go. Yep, that's pretty black. But we are caught in the pan, and we're going to let it drain until we get down to the drips. That's what I generally wait for. And then we'll put that back on. We'll move over to the oil filter to get that out and go from there. Alright, so I've tightened that back up. It's a 15 millimeter. You want to make it snug. If your crush washer still has some life left in it, you don't have to kill it. If you snug it up real tight and it's still kind of dripping, it means your crush washer is either missing or it's just completely worn out and you'll need to go grab a new one. They're normally made out of copper. You can grab them at your local hardware store, local car part store. So that's done, and now we're going to move on to the oil filter, which is this guy right here. It's still located right next to the oil sump. On one side you've got the air conditioner, over here on the other. Pretty sure that's the air conditioner. Yeah, it looks like it. And then you've got one of the exhaust right here on the other side. So this either will be really easy to take off or it's going to be really hard. It's going to depend on who was the last person who put it in. My suggestion to you is get a paper towel and then turn for everything you got, see what happens. Once you get a couple twists loose, it's going to start peeing oil, so you're going to make sure you have your pan ready. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the filter off. We're dribbling some oil where the filter goes. Gonna let that fully drain out and then go ahead and put the new filter on. You can pre-fill it a little bit, and that means putting fresh oil in, but this one, since it goes at an angle versus being vertically installed, you can't fill it up too much or you'll start spilling oil when you go to put the new filter on. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Alright, today's brand of filter is going to be a Wix XP 57045XP. I always try to buy the best filters I can because it's cheap insurance for your engine. The more junk it catches as your engine wears, the less wear happens on the engine itself, letting you have more and more trouble-free miles before you have to do something or before rings get worn or so on, so on, so on. Anyway, so that's going to be our filter. Let's get this out and let's do a little bit of pre-filling while we're letting the last little bits of oil get out from where the old filter was. So we're going to take our filter, I'm going to set it up right, and one of these should be almost empty. That would be this guy with the fancy see-through lid and the little pour spout mouth. Alright, so pre-fill sounds just like what you think it is. You're going to put some oil in the filter. I'd only go about halfway because we're going to mount at an angle and we don't want to make a mess. But I am going to take just a tiny bit of oil. I'm going to stick it right there. And I did that because then I'm going to take my finger. I'm going to go ahead and lube up the seal so that it'll go on smooth. You always want to do that. And I'll say that this guy is ready for mounting. And the reason why we pre-filled is to just cut down on the amount of time that there's no oil in the filter. So I'm going to take this under the car and we'll get it screwed in. Alright, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we're going to go ahead and see if I can get this on one-handed. See how we're spilling a little bit of that new oil. I didn't even fill it that far. Oh, I had it. There it is. You guys probably didn't see much of that, did you? That's a shame. Alright, I'll probably edit this out then. Okay, I've got the new filter in. I spilled a tiny bit of oil, but keeping it under half full was the right call so that our pre-fill didn't wind up just going into the catch pan. Now when it comes to putting your filter on, I just tightened it with one hand. You put these things on too tight, they become really tough to get off next oil change. At the same time, you don't want it too loose, so I just take it to where it starts feeling firm and I'll give it another half turn or so. And I'll leave it at that, and then I'll check a couple hundred miles or so, see if I have any oil you know, dripping down the filter. And if so, I'll tighten it a little bit more. I actually just had to do that to my truck. So I'm going to clean that up, and then want to go top side and start the filling process. Alright, so we've got cap off, and we have a funnel in. And I just have this long funnel available. You don't need to use a long one, short one works just fine. This is a 6-quart fill, so we have a 5-quart bottle of Valvoline full synthetic. Well, this isn't full synthetic blend, high mileage. We're going to drain all of this, and then I've got a partial over here, and that should get us right at 6 quarts. That should have us in the butter zone on the dipstick, and we'll be all right. So filling procedure is pretty simple. Open her up, do a slow, steady pour. Make sure that it's actually going in and that you're not just like plugged up. One time forgot to remove my paper towel plug. Yeah, that was a little embarrassing. But do that, drain this, and once you drain it, you want to go ahead and check the dipstick, because you should be on the stick after 5 quarts. Maybe a little bit low, but you should be on the stick. And then you're going to kind of just slowly add in as needed until you're kind of in the butter zone. Then you want to run it a little bit, make sure you're good. But also when you run it, you want to get it off the ramps, because on this car, I guess I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I guess I'll put a blurb there. You need to be up on ramps. You're not going to be able to get in there unless you're up on ramps. Or you could also you could jack up either side and put either side on jack stands. That works too. But yeah, let's go ahead and get her done. Okay, so for some of you this may seem redundant. For others this will be useful. But how do you read a dipstick? So this is the end of our dipstick, and you see there is a crosshatch and 2 dots. So the crosshatch is where you want your oil level to be.
Nope.
If you're above the dot on the left, you're too full. If you're below the dot on the right, you are too low and you need to add. So you want to be in the crosshatch. Bad camera. Bad. So this dipstick is clean right now. I've wiped all the oil off of it. I'll go ahead and make a draw and then bring it over here, and we'll talk about what we see. Okay, so here we are, and we've got oil on the stick this time, and it's a little hard to tell, but the oil goes about halfway into the crosshatch. And you're going to need to flip the stick over and look on the back side too. If you look on the back side, the oil looks pretty good up through the circle on the left. So this is the side you want to pay attention to. And you get the unevenness because the car is at an angle, and because of how the tube scrapes the oil coming in and out. Sorry, the dipstick scrapes the tube. But we're about half full, so I'll put a little bit more in there, and then that'll be pretty good. I'll back the car up, and we'll let it idle for a little bit, and then we'll check the level one more time. Alright, so we're back on flat ground and engine's running. Sounds good. And when we look at the instrument cluster, we don't see an oil pressure light, which means oil pressure is good, so we're all happy there. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off. We're going to let the oil settle for a few minutes, and then we're going to check the dipstick again and see what our final level looks like. Alright guys, so I checked the oil again, and I needed to add a little more. It was in the butter zone inside the crosshatch, but I wanted it to be a little bit more, so I poured in, and now we're right at full when we're on level ground, so I'm happy. And with that, this is a successful maintenance. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode, which was an oil change on my 2010 Ford Fusion named Jadzia. So please leave a comment. I like to read them. I like to reply to them, and I like to learn from them. Please also like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that fun YouTube stuff. And remember, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. I'll see you guys next episode.